Hey guys, good morning. So, hopefully you've watched my last couple of videos. I was talking recently about how I had this sudden groundswell of creative energy that just was accessible. That's what it felt like. It was just suddenly accessible. Things that I wanted to do in the past that when I thought about doing them, it just was this like exhausting feeling, like this I don't wanna type of feeling. Those things have been absolutely effortless and actually happening almost beyond me. It's almost like I'm just observing myself doing these things with no effort. Does this sound familiar to you? Does this sound like Neville Goddard? Does this sound like the way manifestations happen? I wanted to talk about this with y'all because I wanted to talk about that specific state of wanting something, intending for something, but just like you know that you're not getting anywhere with it because there's just something missing energetically for you towards it. So like you're just, it's like you want to put your energy and focus on creating this thing in this area of your life, but when it comes to actually doing something about it, like even falling asleep in a feeling that it's going to happen, or putting yourself in a scene at night, just any like amount of effort like that, you just sort of like don't want to do it. I think a lot of people get stuck here. I've spent a lot of time in my life towards a lot of different areas of my life in this exact state. And I'm pretty sure if you're picking up what I'm laying down, you can relate. So I wanted to talk about what I think the reasons are for that. And there's 4 big ones. And if you can identify that one of these is, the reason that you don't have any energy available to, effortlessly channel at this idea, then you can look at it and try to change that. You can try to change the thing that's blocking you. Or at the very least, if you don't want to try to change it, you can intend for it to be different. And intention is the power of the universe, in my opinion. True intention backed by sort of a directive, make this happen, is the most powerful thing in the world, and it causes everything to unfold. And the more you can get yourself out of the way in terms of blocking things with your beliefs and ideas about the way things have to happen and all that, the more you can get out of the way, the more you will see that the instant you have an intention, things start to unfold in that direction. So the first thing I wanted to say, and I wanted to say this again, I've talked about this a little bit recently, but I know everybody in the manifestation community wants to think that, okay, the body's an illusion, or, everything is coming from your mind. And so what that means is that you suddenly are transcending your human body. In practice, this does not appear to be the case for anyone, almost anyone. Even the people who miraculously heal themselves from diseases and stuff get the disease first. That's how they do the miraculous healing. You're in a body, and I would be very careful about thinking that you're above anything having to do with the physical body. Just thinking about something doesn't make it a reality. Just thinking about it doesn't make it a reality. And to experience this realm, you've embodied. You're here in physical form. And if you're kind of in general suffering from just not feeling like there's any point in doing anything, and you're really struggling to come out of that, and you're eating a terrible diet, smoking, drinking, doing drugs, anything like that, I really think you have to shift your focus away, or you should. You don't have to do anything. In my opinion, you should shift your focus onto that and resolve that first. You're doing that stuff for a reason. I think you have to look to that and realize that although those things provide some sort of boost, anytime anybody's doing any of those things, they're just trying to reach for the next best feeling, as Esther Hicks says. When you when you go outside to smoke a cigarette, you're whether you realize it or not, you're doing it out of habit, but you're also doing it because that habit provides you with a constant source of the perception of reducing your anxiety or relaxing or whatever. It's all to try to feel to up your feeling, to feel upper. So you have to really look at that, because if you have these things that you're doing physically constantly that are affecting you mentally, that stuff is absolutely going to play into your perceptions. Absolutely. And I wouldn't say this if I hadn't experienced it firsthand myself many times. And over the last year especially, I've really come to understand how food subtly and greatly affects how you're thinking about things. If your gut biome is screwed up, I had a period of time of a few days twice last year, once after I got my wisdom teeth out and I had to go on an antibiotic, and once last January when I had a horrible flu or something of some kind that included 10 days of lower GI problems. I woke up one morning and I found myself thinking, what is the point of any of this? Things I never think. What is the point of, there's just no point. Like this total depressed thinking, to the point it was such a stark difference to how I normally think that I immediately knew something had to be wrong, because it just wasn't me. It was like somebody else in my head thinking my thoughts. And so I started slamming my body full of probiotics, and within probably one day, things were better. So I just wanted to say that if you weren't hyper aware of something like that, you could easily take those thoughts seriously. If you don't understand this and figure out a way to separate yourself and become the observer a little bit, you're going to take a lot of things seriously that are not coming from you. I'll just leave that there, because that's like a whole other video. So that's the first thing that I would look to if you just you want things to be different in your life. You have objectives you want to achieve, you have things you want to manifest, you have changes you want to manifest in yourself and your outer world, and you just can't seem to make any progress due to just kind of being what's the point, or I don't have the energy for this, or whatever. I think people tend to just breeze past that. A bunch of people probably exited this video during this, and someday I hope they will take that seriously, because it's a huge deal. I mean, if you're not operating with a clean machine, there's going to be all kinds of corruption in everything you do. So, and I mean, you don't have to be perfect, but we're talking about solving a problem here. So first things first, is the machine working correctly? Do you just need to unplug and plug back in? Do you just need to restart the computer? Okay, so if that's not the case, if that's not the problem, I think there are 3 other big things. I want to make sure I don't forget any of them. Okay, the first thing that I think really impedes people, that just stops people, you start to go there. You start to, when I say go there, I mean you start to energetically manifest a change in the situation by changing the way you're feeling and thinking towards something, changing something mentally in that direction, whatever form that takes for you. And you hit a wall immediately, because you hit the idea of, there are things that are going to have to happen to get me to that point that I really don't want to experience. Is that true for you? There's, you want a better financial situation. You want a different, another job, but in your mind, you're going to hate every job. And, you will have to go through some expensive education experience that you don't want. Just the idea of going into debt, which, maybe, that may be wise to be thinking that way. I'm going to have to go into debt. I'm going to have to do these things I don't want to do. And so it just stops right there. It just stops. It just blocks the energy off. And you divert your attention somewhere else, or without even realizing it, you say, I'll come back to it. I'll think about this later, or something like that. it just sort of drops because your positive energy moving in that direction is hit by an equal or greater, generally greater, usually greater amount of pushback from yourself, pushing you back into the space that you're currently occupying, preventing you from moving anywhere new. So if that's what's going on, you have to get past that. You have to focus on that and work that out, like mentally, intellectually, which will hopefully be followed by feeling different about it. Things don't have to happen in a certain way to get you to a certain place. But the other side of that, is that some things that people want, if you really want a specific thing, sometimes there are specific things you have to do to get there. And you're just the idea of having to pay for like a big loan to become a doctor or something like that, or just whatever things that I think people, it's legitimate to have resistance to that idea. I think it's normal and natural and legitimate to have resistances to that idea, those kinds of ideas. But you just have to break through that, I think, and have a little faith in the process and go with how you're feeling in your gut. If you actually get to a point where you're going to sign loan papers to take out a big loan to get education, and you're feeling like in your gut, like you're going to throw up in a way that isn't just, you got to be able to discern between I shouldn't be doing this and I'm just nervous about doing this. Your gut will tell you everything you need to know. I think you've got to trust that you cross that bridge when you come to it. Otherwise, you never get anywhere. So, you have to think about that. The things that in your imagination and sometimes in reality that you might have to do to get to an end state that you're trying to manifest, those things aren't set in stone, and you got to get there to see how you feel about it. I'm just going with the medical school example, if you're imagining this situation and it's never all that detailed, it's like there's the big loan and then there's the school and there's the competition and there's the MCAT or whatever. It's like these big chunks of things to be afraid of. When you actually go through these things, it's broken down into these little moment by moment chunks. It's this big idea that's really daunting that I think sucks the energy out of, your available pool of energy that needs to be diverted towards moving towards this thing. And so you just stay right where you are. But these things, the actual experience of these big ideas is broken down to these little handleable chunks, and you just got to let it go and like take the next step if this is your problem. You just manifest the next thing. Let go of the big idea for now and just, what's the next thing? What's the next place I move to? You can always change your mind. You can always, turn around and go backwards or pause or change course or drop it entirely if it's not right for you. But any of those scenarios playing out is better than you just sitting and doing nothing and being stuck, treading water, spinning your wheels. And, also your desire right now that is not super refined because you haven't even started to really go through all these steps. You wanting to be a doctor and thinking, I've got to take out $400,000 in loans and I have to go through intensive medical school with asshole instructors and competitive, colleagues and blah, blah, blah. Your idea of this could easily morph along the way into some other thing. You start interacting with people in this community more. You start interacting with students, former students, residents, instructors, all that. You start having opportunities for people to give you vital information that you need to continue to refine and shape this desire. And you may not even end up going to medical school. The things that you're imagining that you're going to have to do that are just shutting you down immediately when you start to like go towards this thing, they may not play any role in anything you ever do. There are a lot of ways to make money and be a healer. In this example, there are a lot of ways to achieve the end state of whatever it is that you want, and that will be refined and figured out along the way. So, this is all just stuff to think about to unblock that energy, because if you stopped feeling that way, if those resistances weren't there, you would zoom right to this thing. You understand that? Like, this makes perfect logical sense if you think about it. This isn't woo-woo, other than talking about energy. This isn't woo-woo. This is like makes perfect sense. These thoughts and ideas you have are the thing that is sapping you of all that forward momentum that you would have if you weren't thinking those things. When you have a goal and you don't have any resistance to all of the things that get you to that goal, which don't, your idea of that path doesn't generally play out exactly the way you think it will. But either way, when you have this idea and you can kind of visualize the steps and you don't have any resistance to any of those steps, you just go right to the thing. You just go right there. So that to me is the best proof and evidence that manifestation is a thing. It makes perfect sense. Nobody really understands these chance meetings with people or meeting just the right person who says just the right thing at just the right time. That's the sort of mystical part that makes this magical. The rest of it makes perfect sense. Everything happens so naturally, you'd think it would have happened anyway. And when you look back at a life story written, everything flows from one thing to the next perfectly, integrating with everybody else whose things flow from one thing to the next perfectly. It's pretty amazing. Okay. So that's really the big one and why I brought it up first. And then there's another big thing that I think really affects a lot of people. This, for me, I think is the biggest issue I have with generating any kind of change. And by the way, we're setting aside the whole idea of I'm not good enough for this thing I want, because that's its own thing, and that's explored heavily on this channel, and that will be blocking you from access to all kinds of energy that will propel you towards things. So that's its own thing. I'm not bringing that up in this video in case this is the first video you're watching, or you're saying, wait, how did you forget this big thing? I didn't. That's just not a topic I want to discuss on this video. It's central to everything in life. So you should always be working on that. Okay. So the thing I'm talking about that is the issue for me with like the motivation, the generating of the initial engine to start going towards the thing, is the failure to connect fully to how worth it something's going to be. I don't know why this is an issue, but it is. If you're having a hard time even getting up the effort to start to visualize something different, consider whether or not you're downplaying how much that thing is going to be worth any kind of going through stuff you don't want to go through to get. That's another thing. And I don't have a lot to say about that. That's just something to think about. Goals are often really worth achieving. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes you make way too much out of something, and you're building something way up, and it's not going to be what you think it is. That's a problem a lot of the time for people. But those people generally don't have an issue with motivation. They're like obsessed and focused and, making way too much out of something. When you're kind of like, God, I just can't get off my ass to even care about this thing, it's because I think you're not connecting to how good it will be. And this, I think, is where the Neville Goddard imaginal stuff can be really useful. If you spend some time putting yourself into a future situation that you would like to manifest and actually living there and allowing your feelings and stuff to come up and come alive in the scene in your imagination, that I think can be really helpful. But if you have something that continuously comes up, that you continuously think about manifesting, and you just can't get off your ass to put any mental effort towards it, I think you should spend some time considering how worth it it's going to be to manifest that thing. If it wasn't going to be worth it, it wouldn't continue to come up as a desire. Okay? Unless, this is my final point, and the final thing that I think really, really causes this like lethargy towards any sort of movement mentally or physically or any other way towards a different type of life or different thing, is that the desire that you have, the objective that you have, is not your own. It's something that you feel like you should do. It's something that your parents demand that you do. It's something that you've seen modeled in others that you don't particularly resonate with, but you feel like, if I don't do this thing, then I'm not really a woman or a man or insert cultural name, ethnicity, whatever. This one is, I think, can be particularly difficult to move past. But it is also a great thing, because if this is something that is draining your energy and you can get rid of it, all that energy is available for something else. So thinking about that and whether or not the thing, this is my favorite thing. My favorite thing is desires that come up, that sap your energy, that steal your focus and your precious time and energy, and turn out to not even be something that you have to ever think about again. Those are the best. I love those. It's like the do, delegate, delay, discard video I made. I love any desire that can go into the discard pile. Get this off my mind, out of my life, out of any objectives I'm trying to accomplish. It's gone. This is irrelevant to me. This was something that mom, that I decided needed to be a thing because of mom. Dude, I can't tell you how much energy in my life was being expended after I bought my house at the end of 2021. That winter, certain things went wrong. It's a really old house. A certain architectural feature in the front of the house broke. And I called people to try to fix it. It was really old. There was no way to fix this thing immediately. And every day when I came home, I thought, and this was directly because of my mom, I thought, that thing needs to get fixed. This is really important. Because I heard my mom would drive by my house and she'd say, what happened to that thing? That was a beautiful thing in the front of your house. She said it like 5 times. And so for like the next, I would say 2 years after that, which I just had other things going on. It wasn't important to me to fix this thing. Other things were way more important to me. But still, every time I came home, that thing would needle at me. And I'm like, I'm failing at this thing. I wasn't thinking those words exactly. But this feeling was, I'm falling short. And then, it'd be like, why isn't Matt helping me with this? He did, actually. He called people to try, I was just like, why isn't this important to Matt? Why does everything have to be on my shoulders? Again, not vocalized in that way or verbalized in my mind that way, but there's just this feeling every time I came home and saw this thing, wow, I just really can't get my shit together to keep my house together. My partner's not helping me, and there were other things about the house like that also. Like, we had this very small house and this very, I'm extremely busy all the time by choice. Accept it, self. You like being busy. You would rather be busy and focus on the things you're interested in than to have a house that looks like mom's house. My mom's house is immaculate. Immaculately clean, immaculately decorated, immaculately updated, immaculately, kept, landscaped. It's perfect. That's her thing. It's not my thing at all. But until I was 43, that was plaguing me all the time. I was just like, like I was saying, I'm falling short. I'm not doing the things, I should be doing all this stuff. And one day it just hit me. This is all mom. It's got nothing to do with me. No, I don't like my house to be messy. No, I don't like things to be unorganized. But shit happens. And everything that's unorganized in this house has a very good reason for being that way, for remaining that way, because I had a choice between organizing this and spending an extra hour working on something at work, and I chose work because work makes me a lot of money. And I'm just going to go home and go to bed anyway. I'm not even going to sit in the living room tonight. I'm going to go home and go to bed. So why would I, the other people's ideas are absolutely ruling your life. I feel confident saying that in almost every person who is watching this, no matter how self-aware you are. There's so many of them. And, I think you can try to go through everything and try to figure out where this is the case, but it really makes more sense and is more efficient to just deal with these things as they crop up, I think, and the way something is cropping up is that you feel discomfort. You feel angry at yourself. You feel like you're falling short. You don't have energy to go towards this goal that you think is very worthwhile. When those things crop up, then it's a good idea, I think, to look at this stuff and say, is this even my idea? Am I failing to grasp how worth it this change is going to be, even if it's scary or involves things I don't want to do, may involve things I don't want to do, because you have no idea how it's going to play out, really. Am I just shutting this whole thing down by focusing on the idea that there are going to be things I don't want to do and that it's not worth it? I mean, those two kind of go hand in hand, really. I think it's worth it to, think about this stuff as you're experiencing discomfort. If you're not, I think when you first get introduced to these concepts, like the self-concept stuff and manifestation stuff, if it's just brand new to you, you can, it's like when you've never worked out before, and the beginners in working out can gain so much muscle so fast. There's so much progress. There's this beginner's gain. I think you can have that in the manifestation area too, and the self-concept, all that stuff. There's probably, if you haven't really thought about this, there's going to be some big things that jump out right away that you can just get rid of and improve your life dramatically. But then with working out, and you hit a certain point where progress is slower because you're just living your life. You're just doing your workout, and it's as these things come up then that you do more, mental digging, rather than just trying to find all this stuff all the time. I mean, because eventually it turns into interfering, I think, with just living and appreciating your life and allowing things to flow and all that stuff. At some point, I think doing too much analyzing and thinking when you're not really in a situation that calls for it ends up kind of starting to detract from things. But anyway, I hope that this helped somebody. Here I am. I'm just sitting here talking about something to the camera, like the mushroom told Jean that I needed to do. So here, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I probably just sounded like a total crackpot. But if you know, you know. Have a great day.